Ah.
Don't keep coughing so, Kitty. For heaven's sake, have a little compassion on my nerves.
Yes,
cough for my own amusement.
In the grand scheme of Pride and Prejudice, many characters leave a lasting impression. Think Elizabeth, the intelligent and independent heroine. Think Darcy, the brooding, noble gentleman. Even Lydia, the scandalous younger sister, is impossible to forget. But what of Kitty Bennet? What role does she play in the beloved novel, and how does she grow beyond the shadow of her more infamous sister?
Shall we tell her, Kitty?
Yes, and watch to see if she blushes.
Despite her lack of importance in the central plot, Kitty Bennet's role can help us understand the family dynamics of the Bennets, the influence of environment on personal growth, and the impact of Lydia's scandalous elopement on those left behind. While Jane Austen doesn't devote much time developing Kitty's character arc, subtle clues in the novel suggest that she undergoes a transformation after Lydia's departure. In this analysis, I'll hopefully explore Kitty's relationship, her role in the story, and what may have become of her beyond Pride and Prejudice. Kitty Bennet, formerly known as Catherine, is the fourth of the five Bennet sisters. She's frequently depicted as frivolous, impressionable, and desperate to be included in the same excitements as her younger sister Lydia.
Mrs. Forster should have asked me as well as Lydia. I may not be her particular friend, but I have just as much right to be asked as she has. Ha 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 ha! And more too, for I am 2 years older.
Unlike her older sisters, Elizabeth and Jane, who possess wit and moral sensibilities, Kitty lacks independence and direction, often following wherever Lydia leads. From the outset, Kitty's behaviour is defined by her immaturity and her desire for social engagement. She is preoccupied with officers, balls, and eager for attention, and frequently engages in petty complaints. One notable example is her tendency to cough excessively, a habit often dismissed by her family as attention-seeking rather than a genuine ailment.
Don't keep coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake. You tear my nerves to pieces. What's the shreds already?
Don't keep coughing so, Kitty. For heaven's sake, have a little compassion on my nerves.
Yes,
cough for my own amusement.
These moments paint a picture of a young woman who is both overlooked and yet desperate for recognition.
And Kitty,
Yes, Papa?
you may now cough as much as you choose.
Well, Kitty, I think you may cough as much as you choose now.
While Kitty doesn't significantly influence the plot of Pride and Prejudice, her presence serves to reinforce the chaotic, undisciplined nature of the younger Bennet sisters. Her role in the family dynamic highlights Mr. and Mrs. Bennet's failure to properly guide their younger daughters, an issue that ultimately leads to Lydia's disgrace. Visually, Kitty has been portrayed differently across various Pride and Prejudice adaptations, with some versions emphasising her as a secondary Lydia, and others giving her a slightly more distinct personality. A comparative look at the adaptations can shed light on how Kitty's character is interpreted and the extent to which her potential growth is acknowledged. Despite being the elder of the two, Kitty is entirely under the influence of Lydia Bennet. Lydia's bold, reckless nature dominates their relationship, leaving Kitty in the role of the passive follower.
Bye, Lizzie. Look, Kitty, isn't that Captain Carter? Come on, make haste.
The two sisters share an obsession with officers and social outings, but whereas Lydia is fearless and shameless, Kitty remains in her shadow, neither as daring nor as independent. Lydia is daring because she actively flirts with the officers in public, openly disregards social expectations, and ultimately elopes with Wickham without a second thought for the scandal it will cause. Kitty, on the other hand, is not as daring because she doesn't instigate those behaviours herself. She simply follows Lydia's lead. She enjoys the same frivolous pursuits, but she lacks the audacity to act as independently as Lydia does. Similarly, Lydia is independent in the sense that she makes her own, albeit reckless, decisions disregards her family's authority, and actively pursues what she wants without hesitation. Kitty is not as independent because she relies on Lydia to dictate her actions. She does not rebel on her own or take charge of situations. She merely follows wherever Lydia leads. Lydia's charisma and impetuous nature make her the leader, while Kitty, lacking the strong personality, is simply swept along. The power imbalance between them raises an interesting question. If Lydia had not been present, would Kitty still be the same shallow, frivolous girl? Or was she merely a product of her environment, with the potential to grow into something different?
Isn't it nice? Do you think I'd look well in it?
Not as well as me. Come on.
No, I shan't. Jane, come here. Look at this.
Visually, Lydia and Kitty's dynamic is best captured in various Pride and Prejudice adaptations, where Lydia is often seen pulling Kitty along, both figuratively and literally, through social escapades. It's interesting to think. Before Lydia's elopement, there was no clear signs that Kitty possesses any sense of independence. She follows Lydia's lead in everything, from their shared enthusiasm for officers to their disregard of propriety. However, Lydia's scandalous elopement marks a turning point, not just for the family, but for Kitty's development as well. When Lydia runs away with Wickham, the consequences are severe. The family is thrown into disgrace. Mr. Bennet's parenting failures are laid bare, and Mrs. Bennet collapses in hysterics. But while Elizabeth and Jane focus on saving the family's reputation, Kitty undergoes a quieter transformation. Mr. Bennet, now painfully aware of his negligence, imposes stricter rules on his remaining unmarried daughters. Kitty is no longer permitted to go out as freely, and she is forced to withdraw from the lively social world she once enjoyed.
I'm not going to run away, Papa. If I should go to Brighton, I would behave better than Lydia.
You go to Brighton? I wouldn't trust you as near it as Eastbourne.
Interestingly, Kitty's diminished presence in the novel after Lydia's departure suggests that she was never naturally as wild as Lydia. Rather, she was simply following along. Without Lydia's influence, Kitty begins to change. Mentions in the book indicate that she spends more time with Jane and Elizabeth, and there are hints that she becomes more refined. While her transformation is subtle, it suggests that she had the potential for growth all along. But it took the removal of Lydia's influence for her to start developing her own character.
No, Kitty, I have at last learned to be cautious, and you will feel the effects of it. Balls will be absolutely prohibited.
If you're a good girl for the next 10 years, I'll take you to a review at the end of them.
The moment in Pride and Prejudice where Mr. Bennet refuses to let Kitty travel to Brighton, or anywhere near it, can be seen as a pivotal one for Kitty. His remark is dismissive and reinforces the idea that he still sees her as just another frivolous, irresponsible daughter, lumping her together with Lydia despite Lydia being the true instigator of trouble. By this point in the novel, however, there are subtle indications that Kitty has already begun to change. With Lydia gone, she's no longer under her younger sister's influence, and she is spending more time with Jane and Elizabeth, both of whom serve as much better role models. Without Lydia constantly pushing her into mischief and vanity, Kitty has the opportunity to develop her own thoughts and identity. So when Mr. Bennet makes his sarcastic remark, essentially banning her from Brighton and implying that she cannot be trusted, Kitty may very well feel stung by it. After all, if she had started to mature, she may sense the injustice in being judged by her past behaviour rather than who she is becoming. The comment may also carry an element of humiliation, as it suggests that she is still not worthy of trust or independence. And this could be a moment of realization for Kitty, perhaps even a catalyst for further growth, because it forces her to acknowledge how others perceive her and that she must prove through her actions that she's not just a shadow of Lydia. Now, one thing I've often observed is the way Polly Maberly portrays Kitty, especially in the scene where Lydia and Wickham arrive to Longbourn after they're married. Polly Maberly's facial expressions in the 95 adaptation as non-verbal cues are a powerful way to understand the character's internal emotions. In that particular scene, when the Bennet family is waiting for Lydia and Wickham to arrive as newlyweds, Kitty's expression does seem to convey a shift in her feelings towards Lydia. Given Kitty's earlier idolisation of Lydia, one might expect her to be excited by her sister's return, especially since Lydia is now married, something that in Regency society would have been seen as an enviable status for a young woman. However, if Maberly's performance suggests displeasure or discomfort, this could indicate that Kitty is already beginning to distance herself from Lydia's reckless behaviour. What could Kitty be feeling? Disillusionment, perhaps? Before the elopement, Kitty saw Lydia as the fun, daring leader, but now, in the wake of the scandal, Kitty may have started to realise the full consequences of Lydia's actions.
No, Jane. I take your place now. You must go lower, because I am a married woman.
Even though the marriage saved Lydia from total disgrace, it is clear to the rest of the family that Wickham was forced into the marriage, and there is no real honour in it. Kitty may have seen for the first time that Lydia's choices do not always lead to admiration or success. How about embarrassment and shame? Kitty has had time to reflect during Lydia's absence and may now feel ashamed of how they both behaved before the scandal.
And Lydia and I danced every dance.
And Mary none.
Seeing Lydia return, completely oblivious of the stress she caused, might make Kitty acutely aware of how her sister's reckless nature contrasts with the rest of the family's subdued, almost mournful reception of the newlyweds. This could be a painful realization for Kitty, as it forces her to see Lydia in a new, less admirable light. What about resentment? It's also possible that Kitty feels resentment, not necessarily towards Lydia personally, but towards the way Lydia's behaviour has led to stricter rules being imposed on her.
You go to Brighton? I wouldn't trust you as near it as Eastbourne. Not for £50.
As I said earlier, Mr. Bennet's restrictions on Kitty's social life following Lydia's elopement may have stung, and she may see Lydia as the reason she is now being treated differently. Maybe jealousy versus moral awakening. If Kitty is not yet fully matured at this stage, there could still be lingering trace of jealousy. Lydia has gone ahead by securing a husband first, and Kitty may still crave the excitement of marriage and officers' attentions. However, if Kitty's expression suggests genuine displeasure, it could mean that she's not jealous at all, but rather starting to develop a more mature perspective. Perhaps even recognising that marriage to Wickham is not a prize. If Polly Maberly intentionally played Kitty as displeased in this moment, it is an insightful choice that aligns with Kitty's subtle character growth. Rather than being the same naive girl who once followed Lydia in everything, Kitty may already be evolving into someone who sees Lydia's impulsiveness for what it truly is, irresponsible and ultimately damaging. With Lydia removed from her immediate sphere of influence, Kitty's social world changes dramatically. She now spends more time with Elizabeth and Jane, both of whom represent stability, intelligence, and moral grounding. Given this shift in environment, it is reasonable to assume that Kitty gradually matures, becoming more composed and less frivolous. Mentions in the book suggest that Kitty benefits from her new influences, and some scholars speculate that, given the right circumstances, she may have grown into a refined and sensible young woman. In the Regency era, social expectations for young women were heavily influenced by their surroundings. With Elizabeth now married to Darcy and Jane to Bingley, Kitty likely gained exposure to more respectable society, further encouraging her growth. Though Jane Austen never provides a definitive conclusion for Kitty, her brother, Henry Austen, once stated that Kitty eventually married well. Though this is not confirmed in the novel, it provides an intriguing possibility. I found this passage on the website pemberley.com. According to the memoir of Jane Austen, published in 1870 by her nephew James Edward Austen Lee, Jane Austen told her family that Kitty, in brackets Catherine, Bennet, was satisfactorily married to a clergyman near Pemberley, not unlike Charlotte and Mr. Collins. Fan fiction and alternative interpretations propose various futures for Kitty. Some suggest she marries a military officer, perhaps a reformed version of Wickham, while others believe she found a respectable match within Elizabeth's new social circle. Regardless of her exact fate, it is generally accepted that she did not follow in Lydia's footsteps, but instead took a more sensible and respectable path. Kitty Bennet, as we meet her in Pride and Prejudice, is not an independent thinker. She's easily swayed by those around her, particularly Lydia, and seems to lack a distinct identity of her own. But is that who she truly is, or who she was at that moment in time? People are not static. We evolve, sometimes because of the choices we make, sometimes because life forces us to change. Kitty's transformation after Lydia's elopement is subtle but significant. Stripped of Lydia's influences, forced to reassess her life, and placed in the company of Elizabeth and Jane, Kitty begins developing into someone different.
Lizzie, do you mind if I just run down the lane here to call on Mariah Lucas?
No, not at all.
Someone stronger, more refined, and perhaps more self-aware. And isn't that true for all of us? The person we are at 17 is rarely the person we become at 25 or 30 or beyond. Our experiences shape us, the mistakes we make, the people who come and go from our lives, and the circumstances we face all contribute to our personal growth. Kitty, in many ways, represents this universal truth. By the time Henry Austen or James Edward Austen Lee make reference to her future, she's no longer just Kitty Bennet, Lydia's sidekick. She's Catherine Bennet, a woman who, by all accounts, matures, marries well, and likely settles into a respectable and happy life. Perhaps even a life that Lydia, for all her youthful confidence, might envy in the end. So before we judge Kitty too harshly, let's consider this. Who amongst us would want to be defined only by the way we were as teenagers? Growth is inevitable, and if we allow ourselves the space to evolve, we, like Kitty, can move beyond the limitations of our past and into the future of our own making. So, yeah, I don't want to say let's learn by Kitty's mistakes, but certainly we see that without Lydia's influence, Kitty grows and, it makes a meaningful life for herself. So what do you think? Have you ever looked back at yourself and realised how much you've changed? Do you think Kitty's transformation is realistic, or do you see her differently? Let me know in the comments, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So until the next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you then. Bye for now.